ready.
Well, at the start of tonight's broadcast, Shannon has already lost 2 eggs.
Might have been 3. Oh my God.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to, I think this is NonSequitur, I believe. I wish you guys could be along for the ride that happens before the show. That's where the magic really happens.
I would never say those things on air, ever.
Exactly.
The delay.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we were spending 5 minutes talking about my penis. I don't think that's really what we want to
There
talk
goes
about.
another one.
Yep.
Oh, there goes another egg.
Somebody make a,
I see
make
it
a
as
graphic where we X them out as we go along. Let's just line him up at the bottom, and we'll shoot them off as we go.
I will be in menopause by the end of this stream.
There's a good food joke in here somewhere. Like, how does Steve like his eggs in the morning? Super dead.
You guys remember Kyle always wanted a dumpster fire. He's been wanting a dumpster fire for a while, and I believe tonight you're going to get it.
I don't think so.
Because we are going to be talking about making voting mandatory. Jimmy, in just a second, will go into some diatribe about how it should be mandatory, even though the polls clearly show prior to this show that all of you think that voting should not be mandatory. Now, I don't want to make you biased or anything, but those are just the numbers. Now, he's going to try to persuade you. We'll see.
I was invited on to discuss the concept of whether Cyrus the skeptic is in fact a bunch of squirrels in a suit pretending to be
That's what I read for the day.
I don't know what the fuck
make
you're
more
talking
sense.
about.
There's no debate there, though. There's no.
That would actually make more sense.
Science actually confirmed it. All right, let's talk about mandatory voting.
And we're going to get into that in just a second. But first, let's run through what we've got coming up for the next couple of days. There's not a graphic for this, but tomorrow is going to be the Jeopardy late birthday party for me, 10,000 subscribers, all of that jazz. Steve's putting together a non-sequitur Jeopardy game. He's got a couple surprises as well that I've seen today. Very funny. So make sure you join us tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. Monday, Aaron Ra will be with us to discuss the phylogeny challenge and classification. It will be a tutorial, not like you used to seeing him on here where he's coming and burying creationists and stupid flat earthers. So he will be with us to actually go through something educational Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Tuesday, we have the guys from the podcast, What the If, very popular podcast. Great guys. They actually have a game that they put together called What the If, Flat Earth Edition, that they made just for this show. So come check that out. It's going to be at 8 p.m. Eastern as well on Tuesday. And then just to fast forward ahead to Friday. Friday is going to be another big debate. This is, if you remember watching the Jeranism and Red's rhetoric debate, Jeranism was supposed to come with a model of a flat earth. He did not. Instead, he just said nuh-uh and and oh no. So these two guys, the Limitless channel and Awake Souls, have put together a model, so they say. And Steve fully believes them. He backs their model 100%.
Not true.
Are these the guys
Not
that
what I
we
heard
made the
before the
booty
show.
call with? Are these the
They
guys
what?
we made the booty call with late at night? Trying to get them to show up?
Yeah.
All right.
Those are these guys. And so it will be those two gentlemen taking on Red's Rhetoric and Godless Engineer. It'll be a tag team debate. So Model Geddon next Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Bring alcohol.
Don't miss it.
You will need it.
Yes, bring lots of alcohol. And then if you are a Patreon, first of all, thank you. Second of all, we have another private hangout. We have these every other week. This Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern. All of you are invited. You come hang out, shoot the shit. We do ask if you are coming that you bring your favorite thing about the show and your least favorite thing. The emphasis on the least favorite thing because we like to make sure that we're providing a show that at least you can stomach somewhat. Now, we push that envelope every day, but we want you to be able to handle it somewhat. So that's going to be Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern. And the links for that will be in the Patreon page and the Discord channel. Okay, I wanted to do something a little bit different before we started the debate tonight. Shannon, as many of you know, I don't understand it. Never have understand it. She gets a hard time. She's the sweetest person on the planet, yet she attracts more anger and Nazi thoughtness that I have ever seen. So I thought it would be fun. This is always a good time for Shannon to bring her 5 worst comments that she's been told since she's been a creator here on YouTube, and we're gonna have Dave dramatically read those, and they're gonna. Don't worry, guys. If you wanted more, there will be more tomorrow. I've got her bring in another batch tomorrow, so there is more. Unfortunately, Shannon, there is more where this came from. So, Dave, take it away.
From Pele, plain Earth lovers anywhere. Oh, you're so incredibly disgusting. From Kill Grdru, however you say that, I would fuck the dog shit out of you. Anal, foot job, I'm all in.
I still don't know what a foot job is.
That's the one somebody sent me, not her.
I'll show you later.
Could you restate it in the form of a haiku?
Jonathan Nicoli says, being anti-atheist is a prejudice like any other. It should not be tolerated. America, are you listening?
Are you
anti-atheist says, I'm Canadian.
I don't think so. I think you meant anti-theist.
Shannon's quit there at the end is, I'm Canadian.
I'm Canadian.
That's her thing for everything nowadays. I'm Canadian.
America, are you listening?
Canada part of
Right-wing rage says to Shannon Q in a reply, get a clue, dopey heathen girl. Shouldn't you be on some godless twit's YouTube? Brainless cranium, was it?
That's correct, actually.
Dave, you read it way too nice. Get a clue, dopey-headed heathen.
Well, I'm not godless engineer, so I'm not going to try to do his whole...
Oh, now we're getting into...
If godless engineer was here, he could do this like so much better than I could. So,
oh no, you're doing fine.
So Devacor replies to Prag Culture. Look at those weak men who feed her into thoughterry. I can only feel sorry for their lack of understanding of women.
Just fed me right into it.
I love how they made.
You thought, but then I was like, "You got these weak men really encouraged me." I had to.
Shannon, that needs to be your second channel name, The Thoughterry.
And this one is the pièce de résistance.
Oh God, yeah.
No.
Wojak what? You know that no matter how much dick you shove in your excuse me, I had to start this over again because this is just so much visually visceral. You know that no matter how much dick you shove in or dead babies you vac out from between your legs, it will never make up for the fact Dad wasn't there to protect you. Wah wah wah.
Now let's hold right here because as bad as these were.
There's more.
I'm actually consulting with science, and I just found an article that says 82 babies vacuum from between your legs will make up for Daddy not being there.
I'm so close. You didn't keep killing my egg.
You more.
We're already off the rails, and we haven't even begun.
Only a 7, really, Jammy.
You have pissed off the incels like I've never seen.
They are
pissed off.
That was just a build-up. I was just starting accumulating them like an hour and a half ago. I was.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, Steve. Those are nothing compared to the insult that was given to me 6 months ago.
Get over
5 months ago. Huh?
You need to get over it.
I can't. I brought it here with me today, Steve.
Just a discounted garden gnome doesn't compare to having people talk about backing out babies and shit from between.
Say that now, Steve. But I want you to see what a discount garden gnome actually looks like.
Oh God!
Discount ballot box.
Kyle Curtis, you are a discount garden gnome.
That Shannon is when you hit rock bottom.
Yeah, that is. You know what? You can't get much lower than that. You're really
bad. You're right. It's weird that I feel bad for you. I'll trade.
You're supposed to
get it away. Get it off the screen, Dave. Get it off the screen.
make it stop. Make it stop.
It wouldn't be so bad if they hadn't put the term discount in it. Like I'm not good enough to be a regular Target gnome.
It's on the clearance shelf with all the broken pottery.
Right.
Who's gonna pay full price for Kyle the garden gnome?
I have to be a Big Lots gnome. I can't be in Target. That's
Hey, I was an operations manager for Big Lots. Oh yeah, I hated it. Never mind. Go ahead, diss on him.
I didn't realize how much, like Jammy mentioned it beforehand. I didn't realize the amount of pressure I was going to feel that he's rating jokes once it actually started.
Figure it's appropriate. Rough. We're voting, you know.
There we go. Everyone has to vote. It's mandatory.
No, he's just rating, it's not. He's just rating your jokes, Jimmy. Remember.
So let me go through real quick, and then I will have Jammy announce the topic for tonight. But let me introduce our esteemed guests. To your top right, ladies first. She is the queen of Thoughtlandia, the red pill Nazi herself.
I always sound like I'm the worst human ever.
Sounds like you're introducing the queen on Game of Thrones. You got like 17 superlatives that you go through.
It must be so disappointing to people.
She is Xena warrior princess to incels everywhere.
That's true. That's fair. I'll take that one.
Let's all discover what the fuss is about. Shannon Q.
I'm sorry, that needs rated. Come on, Jammy.
Jammy, that was awesome. Don't you dare. I have mute power.
About. Oh, this is bullshit.
What a sucker.
I do not agree with the curve.
Thank you. Okay. And to the shining beacon of TV personality, the man that looks like he belongs on CBS Morning News every morning, Jammy Sizlo.
Oh, well, thank you. I thought you were going to introduce Jimmy.
No way.
I said CBS, not the public access.
Yeah, I'm just a working schmo. You know, that's what I do. But no, I'm jealous of Jimmy's posters too. Those things are badass. But yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I hope it's a fun. I'm not going to say debate because it's going to be over with immediately. Obviously, Jimmy and I have the correct position.
Oh my God!
But no, and I put on the proper shade of lipstick for everybody so they can see those full red lips. And they drive me nuts. They drive me nuts. But no, I'll turn it over to the talent.
No, nobody's going to be able to focus on any of the debate because of just looking at those luscious lips all night.
I was almost going to say it's the tits and teeth.
That's a smart tactic. It's a smart tactic. Because you know what? That's going to be the only way that you win this, actually.
Why do you think I invited him on? Also, he's smarter than me, so there's that.
And then there was this guy. What can you really say about this guy? Except for that he's a guy and he does videos that are pretty good. But
they're fine.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. If you have not checked out his astrology video, you have to go see it. It's hilarious. I actually think you should get that book, Jimmy. And
you think so?
Read. Yes, totally.
Read it on air.
How do we say this, Jimmy? The only person that can bring out my sexual frustration live on camera, Mr. Atheist.
I'll take it.
He's blushing.
That's me trying to bring out sexual frustration.
Do you want to say a few words, Jimmy?
Yeah. Go check out. So like he was mentioning, I did a video on why, as an atheist, it's okay to believe in astrology. No, I'm just kidding. I shit on Kendall Ray for 32 minutes straight. It's pretty awesome. And this Sunday, actually, you can watch Steve and Kyle on my channel, on my show, Sunday Mass, joined by Holy Kool-Aid. So,
I'm not going.
Right. It's going to be the first time he doesn't come for me.
Mass. I'm just not going to do the whole standing up, sitting down.
I totally set that up for you.
You're welcome.
I totally set that up.
You did.
Okay, so let's put our serious faces on, which will last all of 3 seconds.
Oh, Steve, I forgot to do our planned comment joke.
I set it up for you, but you missed that pop.
I missed it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Should we go for it? Just put it out there. Go ahead, Steve. Set it up again.
It's past. It won't be funny. I don't want Jammy to rate it a 1 again. I have security issues.
That was friendly fire. That was friendly fire.
Oh, okay. There is two kinds of friendly fire. That is true.
Oh my god.
That was thank you.
9. Come on.
Thank you.
How biased are you? That's a second.
Thank you.
All right, I'll put it away before that gets old.
He already loves
Okay.
your supple lips. You don't need to keep kissing it.
Jimmy, Jimmy, say something to try to salvage this. I feel we've already lost it.
Yeah,
All right. So right now we have an issue at hand, and I want to start talking about two things: the practicality and the technology. And right now, as a matter of practicality, the technology just does not exist for a squirrel to impersonate a human being. Sorry, I'm committing to that joke from earlier. Okay, I'll move back.
Well, that was Non-Sequitur. I'm Kyle Curtis. That was Steve McCrae. Thank you for joining us.
It's been great.
It's been usual.
We still won.
No, you didn't.
So, mandatory voting, because I never come on here and talk about anything non-controversial. Wait, did we actually cut off? Because am I just saying it to you guys now? I am on air still, right?
Well, I think so.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay, just checking. I didn't know if there was a graphic going with the whole thing. Okay, good. Okay, so mandatory voting. Nobody here, I don't know. Jammy and I didn't consult beforehand, but I don't think anybody here is actually advocating for the idea of forced voting, as in like the last election. No one is saying you must choose between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton and cast a vote for one of them. And if you don't, you'll be shot in the streets or arrested or whatever. I do believe in a mandatory voting model, mostly because our voter engagement and our voter turnout are embarrassing. Last election, we had about 60%, which was actually kind of high based on the average. Our top one, I don't remember the exact number, was in 2008, the McCain-Barack Obama. I want to say that one was 72, but I could be wrong on the number. The specific model that I am in favor of, and then we can go into everything else. But first thing I would do is lower the voting age to 16 years old. You must always be registered to vote, and you must participate in the election until you are 35, where you will still be required to be registered. However, you won't have to turn in a ballot. Up until 35, you will have to turn in a ballot for every major federal election every 2 years. But that ballot can be entirely blank. I'm looking over, I have all the bullet points, but if it looks like I'm just bad at engaging with the camera. So as we've lowered the age, along with that, we make, as we already somewhat do in high school, certain social studies classes mandatory: civics, government, and your actual first experience voting will be as part of your social studies civics program. So you will learn how to engage with the process, how to assess candidates, and then actually, as a matter of performance, you'll actually vote in a way that actually means something. The whole reason for lowering the voting age to 16 is to be able to engage those people, which now by that process of civics and governments classes are more informed than your average voter. Additionally, election day, I would make it a federal holiday and to give you an actual week of time to either cast your ballot or drop off ballots. The holiday would only be one day, but you would actually have a week where you could go in and vote in person, and you would have multiple ways to vote. Colorado has a pretty successful, which is where I live, mail-in ballot system, which I would implement nationwide. You'd also have the in-person, the drop-off, and eventually an online ability to vote. Obviously, we couldn't launch that tomorrow because then Vladimir Putin would be president. So that is my model. Benefits: you eliminate voter suppression, obviously. Increase voter turnout, reduce political apathy, and I think there's more points, but the screen's cut off. So I'll leave it there for the moment.
Here's a question, or first question.
Yeah.
If you're not making people actually fill anything in, they just have to turn it in.
Yes.
Isn't that like a huge waste of resources?
Of paper? Sure.
Time?
Yep. So engage with the actual process. I'm not remotely for what we are talking about here. I don't care. I do want to get to the online eventually make it extremely easy. Also, when you vote in person and you have a week, so it's not as crowded and it's terrible to vote in person as it is now, you'd have an ability to go in there, and the only paper you maybe would take are those states who have the receipts. But yes, of course, there's going to be lots of wasted paper, so that would be a problem to improve upon somehow. However, would not in any way affect whether or not I think the system is still an overall positive.
I have a list of questions.
Ready? I was thinking we were.
Shannon, can I ask?
Do we want Jammy to present?
Let me ask my last one, Shannon, and then we'll go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, let's tackle yours first, and then we'll move to Jammy's. I don't think that yours will take very long, so
my questions.
Oh, that's so cute.
We'll go ahead and knock that out of it.
So cute.
But isn't that against what democracy is?
No,
as a whole,
we have lots of.
How so?
To have the right to hold on, to have the right to vote and choose not to.
You are still able to abstain from voting in this way.
But there's going to be a fine, right?
Yes, much like other things that have been ruled democratic by the Supreme Court, like the individual mandate.
I think this might be a little different, though.
Not a tax, right?
So, okay, so how do you police who doesn't turn in ballots? Because then how is your ballot, like, people would have to track ballots in this fashion then. So you need to know who turned in a ballot.
Yep.
So that is a massive administrative burden.
No, it's
right?
Administrative burden, certainly. Yeah. I mean, as far as you have to do work, and yes, technically it's all
Especially
work that has to be, it's also work that all has to be done now for the current system. So what we're talking about isn't whether or not that administrative work already exists. So for example, when I mail in a ballot, they open it, my signed affidavit goes in one pile and my vote goes in another to make sure that there is no association of my vote with my name.
Right.
They'll retain the anonymity. So we're not actually talking about something being a difference in administrative requirement, except for the level to which we will need it, because now everyone will be voting. So it's only as bad as a year that actually gets 90% voter turnout, like you see in places with mandatory voting laws like Australia. Right now, we're only doing it for 60%. So to me, it being more paper or more administrative, again, is only a problem because our voter turnout is low, which we need to improve, and we need to improve voter engagement. This is the best way to do so. If there is another way to get voter engagement up to that high, then give that to me as a counter model, and I would assess that and consider it. However, this does seem to be the most obvious choice.
Are there studies that correlate a higher voter turnout to a better government or a more well put together government?
Are there whether or not the government is better because there is a higher turnout?
Like Australia.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you're talking about. Is, are there studies that support subjective opinion? So Australians might say, yes, our government is better, might say it's worse. Whether or not democracy is about laws put into place by the people and elected by the people.
Yeah, but that's my ultimate point, though. That's my ultimate point, though. You want people that are voting to care about what they're voting about, right? So if those countries that do make you to vote, that where voting is mandatory, is there a correlation to having a more overall greater satisfaction as a whole? Because
so you want specific statistics
into trouble.
You want
no? I'm just asking if you if you've seen any
statistics. You're asking for a very specific
overall
study, which is a correlation of happiness and mandatory voting, which was certainly not something I went and looked up in preparation for this. I mean, that's super hyper specific. Even Jammy might know. I don't know, but again, wouldn't actually speak to the actual issue at hand.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to jump in, because I think everyone's biggest concern is increasing voter turnout. There's already been models that have been developed before, before mandatory voting has even been considered. Stuff like fair representation voting, national popular votes, instant runoff voting, ranked choice voting, universal voter registration, etc. I don't know what the reason is why mandatory voting hasn't been considered as a serious alternative, other than, and again, my studies have been, I'm going to be honest, have been focused primarily on America. So I hate to come across as narrow-minded tonight, but I didn't look at the world too much. However, mandatory voting, the model that I have for, is concerned with voter turnout, but also making sure that people still have a choice, and it's not a situation where they would have to be fined or anything like that. The goal here is to move our system from what it is now, which is it's called a majority system, but in all seriousness, it's a polarity system. And that's because it's not really based on the person who gets 51%. It's based on the person who has the most votes. If anybody in the audience isn't familiar with that, I went to a caucus a couple years ago, and they had 4 town supervisors that came in to vote. And if anybody is familiar with the caucus, you'll know you sit in a room with, a few hundred people or whatever, and there's a traditional parliamentarian process where you nominate somebody, there's a motion, a second, and then the room votes on it. And before they read the rules of the voting earlier, and I could tell it was going to go down this polarity approach where whichever one of the 4, whichever one gets greater than 25% gets it. So I said, I make a motion that we change the rule so that it's the 4 people up, and then you go down to the top 3, then you go down to the top 2, and then that way we can guarantee that the last person standing had greater than 51%. And everybody said, oh, that's going to take too long and all this. But if we truly are talking about a system of democracy, we need to get back to representing 51%, and we need to do it with greater than 75% of the population. So I do have a model. Mine's round. It's not flat. And my model is this. It's that the elections aren't counted as a credible election. They're completely dismissed unless 75% or greater of the voting population votes. And this gives citizens a chance to show civil disobedience. So, for example, if the choices just weren't good enough, people stay home. They don't vote. They're not penalized. But then it forces our politicians and the people in the national political parties to reconsider what they're offering America. And like I said, I'm going to be narrow-minded, is only speaking to America tonight. But it would be mandatory registration in the sense that you need to register the same as you do with signing up for selective service, and in a sense doing jury duty. But your participation in the voting would be based on, can we get a 75% or greater voter turnout, or 80%, or whatever the political scientists deem as the appropriate number.
So I'm hearing 2 different
And what
models.
happens when you don't? Does that mean
they are 2 different?
Does that mean that the president who is currently sitting would remain there until that's settled?
Yeah, I mean, and this is the thing that makes this such a complex situation. I mean, we have so many things within our voting process in America that would have to be seriously changed. How do we handle the Electoral College? For or against it, we're definitely not doing what it was ever intended to do right now. So, I mean, we already are making changes to that. As would we go farther with the changes all the way to the point of just completely removing it? Would we go closer towards what it used to be, where it represented more of a geographic-based demographic than a statistical-based demographic? Do we get into a system where, yes, majority works because we're getting greater than 75% voter turnout? However, we use purely electors, so that it's, the idea is that higher educated people are able to make these decisions on who should be in these positions. There is a concern that, at least what I've heard, is that people said, we don't want mandatory voting because there's a lot of stupid people out in the world.
Agreed.
And it's the fear of that is, you got a meth head who now is capable, just because of their age, can go and vote. Now, I know it's America, and freedom should exist for everyone, but we want to be responsible in these decisions. So again, I'm just saying, get the voter turnout there, the infrastructure and how we actually get that to accomplish, the logistics, the policies that need to be put in place. This would be a major change for America. It wouldn't be anything simple like just going to a national party system.
Can somebody speak to the numbers real quick? And
yes.
Then I'm going to let Shannon ask away. But can somebody speak to the numbers as they stand now, like what the turnout is you know, all that stuff in detail.
I produced a couple slides for tonight. Dave, if you could put up slide number 1 so the audience can see that. This is a slide that shows voter turnout based on eligible voters. Eligible voters are defined as of the voting age and not also a U.S. citizen and not having been convicted of a felony, where they would have that, they would be disenfranchised. So you can see we're talking around 60% during presidential elections. It's, you know, can America really say that America wanted either Hillary or Donald Trump when only 60% of the people who could possibly have voted showed up?
That's higher than I thought.
Obama in 2008, whom I think a lot of people believe there's a consensus that there was a lot of energy and excitement for. Energy and excitement was 2% more than voted Trump versus Hillary.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is it's depressingly low. I mean, we can do better as a country.
Seems that every other election is an increase.
Yeah. Now, if I'm going to show you another slide, go ahead.
Let me explain that. Every other election, are you saying every other election is an increase of the prior presidential election? Because if you're just going with every other,
no, I'm going based on the total ballots. It's probably because of the incumbent thing.
You have a non-presidential election followed by presidential, non-presidential, presidential.
Right.
So it's a senatorial and those kind of elections.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to show you a comparison between like midterm elections to presidential elections. So if you go to slide 2, this is showing that when it's the president's not being voted for, people stay home. They're just not interested. And this to me is the thing that's really hurting our country. America was intended to be grassroots up. There's 2 main reasons why the Electoral College was put into the Constitution. One of those was the framers did not believe that the general public would have a true understanding of what the presidential position entails, what the powers are. They couldn't relate easily. But you know, when you're looking at running a military, you know, being the commander in chief of a military is one example of appointing life term justices to the Supreme Court, you know, but where a lot of general citizens in America have a lot of experience in is running household budgets, making rules for their own home and parenting their children. So they saw a correlation there with House of Representatives, you know, senators, and especially local politicians. These are your state senators, state assembly people, you know, your mayors, your town councilmen, councilwomen, those positions. And so, but people stay home. They're impressed with the debates. In my opinion, they're impressed with the debates, the flash of the fighting and all that. That gets all the attention, so therefore it gets the most response. And really, the power of the American citizen rests with your local elections, the one that people stay home for. Unfortunately,
makes sense.
I don't want to. I only have one last slide here. If you want me to just jump right to it for sake of time, I can do that. Dave, if you don't mind going to slide 3. So slide 3, compares us to the world. So the blue dots are what you want to pay attention to. The blue dots, again, are percentage of eligible voters. This would be people who are U.S. citizens or any of these countries' own citizens. If the country has a disenfranchisement law that there are people who weren't convicted of a felony and greater than their voting age, whatever that may be. And some countries actually do have a 16-year-old voting age. So I see Jimmy's model is succeeding there as well. But but look at how low we are on the list, and we're supposed to be the leaders of democracy. I just thought that slide spoke a lot on its own.
It's like that, and the fact that prostitution's illegal says to me that America's not all that free. I mean, I'm just saying. I see
Vegas.
How differently do you think the outcomes of these elections would be if voting was mandatory?
For me, massively. And the main reason is I'm not saying that would meant Hillary would have won and then Romney before. Actually, the opposite. I would say that mandatory voting and high voter turnout is the first time you will actually see the practical ability for a non-Republican or non-Democrat to win an election. Because right now, voter turnout is also most incentivized to those who participate in those 2 parties. So by making voting mandatory and increasing turnout, if you want to see a larger ballot with more actual practical choices, you actually introduce that possibility. So I actually see like the 2016 election as being Hillary and Trump but then you might have actually had a shot for Bernie Sanders coming in third party, or Gary Johnson, or whatever, and you would have a system in place that actually makes that possible. It also incentivizes states to fix their gerrymandering problems, and gives you a good reason to get rid of the Electoral College.
Well, Jamie, let me ask you. We have a representative democracy, right? And so the people that do vote, aren't they a decent sample size of what constitutes the American public, of the people that do vote? Is that the theory? That's how it's supposed to be?
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. It's the idea. This is my argument against people who are anti-government in America. Is that they believe they forget the idea that the consensual consent. The consensus for consent is actually the people that you don't hear about. It's not the actual individual. It's not the tree. It's the forest, right? So a lot of times the people are voting. I was going to add this to what you're talking about, Steve. Is I had some other numbers here real quick. Let's see here. Older / more educated voters come out in larger percentages than younger / less educated voters. So, for example, we're showing 35% of younger / less educated voters come out compared to 65% of the opposite end. Women outvote men. When you look at 18 to 65 years of age, it's about a 12% gain. I think this is mainly because husbands are afraid to disagree with their wives. Let's see, 41 to 47% of eligible 18-year-olds vote, compared with 70% of retirement age individuals. 23% of eligible voters without a high school or equivalent diploma voted, to a linearly increasing 76%. So we went 23% to 76%. And at the 76% was those with an advanced college degree. By ethnicity, 65% of Caucasians, 60% of African Americans, 58% of Pacific natives, and the last was tied between Asians and Hispanics at 32%. So I do agree that there is a representation of America. I think, though, that by making this a citizen's responsibility, it's going to bring up that base a little bit, in the sense that people would want to make sure they're making the right decision. I am speculating there, but I just want to get our country back, where it should be, closer to the top, if we're going to be a leader in this thing.
But does it necessarily have to be the increasing the amount of people rather than the quality, Shannon?
Yeah, so I have a bunch of questions. So when you're talking about mandatory voting, it's great to say, yeah, we should do mandatory voting, but it's not really mandatory. You can turn in a blank ballot or whatever, right? Like I'm not going to really address the age part of the model yet. I'm just going to address the mandatory voting part of the model. So you're going to have implications and repercussions, I think, that need to be taken into consideration. A lot of the people that aren't voting, in my experience, in my estimation, they're not voting because, let's say, they have to work during poll hours, or they aren't able to get to the polls. They have transportation issues. They have childcare issues. So what are the repercussions for these people that find it difficult to get to the polls? Are you going to implement a strategy where people have mandatory paid day, so they don't have to miss a paid day off in order to go and vote in any election? Because this would extrapolate out. It wouldn't simply just be presidential elections, which we're referencing. I would assume that this would be legislation that makes voting mandatory across the board for all elections. So that means municipal councils, that means school boards, that means, I believe you guys vote for justices there as well. So, and so if every election is mandatory, everybody has to take some time off every time there's an election, so that they can go in. They
twice a year.
Actually,
twice a year.
Yeah, I'll take that one. So my model actually addressed it to some degree, and then I'll follow up. The main election day is a federal holiday. You have a week to turn in, vote in person, whatever you want. The mail-in ballot also makes things extremely convenient because I voted from my desk. As far as what you are talking about now, though, actually what's interesting to point out about it is what you were talking about is something that has been weaponized, and there's a lot of cases down in the South where people were for voter suppression, to take those people that they know are going to have a harder time getting there and make it even one step even harder. So what you're talking about right now is a problem that has to be solved, whether it's mandatory voting or not.
I agree with that. It should be easy to vote.
Who wants to. Yeah, exactly. So as far as why my model addressed that, federal holiday for election day, and so far I've only talked about what I would do on the federal level. The state level I think would be a little bit tweaked because I am one of those weird liberals who does believe a lot in state rights. So, but as far as on the federal level and federal elections, you would get federal holiday plus a week, plus mail-in, plus eventually an internet ballot.
Shannon, don't you think that it would solve everything if you were able to vote like you like stuff on Facebook or Instagram? Just double tap it and heart it, or
yeah, sure. Except for that there'd be no way to police who's actually voting for anything.
Yeah, I mean, how many stock accounts
would ballot? Put the ballot in social media, and that will solve everybody.
Yeah, I get the joke and all of that. However, ease of access has absolutely been a voter suppression technique. So while it's funny, because let them vote on Facebook, letting people vote on the internet is actually, even if we weren't talking about mandatory voting, figuring out a safe way to do it would actually lead to the empowerment of voting.
Well, I voted while I was cooking dinner in a municipal election.
If you did it somehow,
like you could vote online, that would solve everything. I think
we can vote online in municipal elections here. So I still have a couple other questions. I know everybody wants to ask questions. I'm super patient at the beginning. Now I want to ask them, please. Yeah. So when we talk about mandatory voting, when you say mandatory, that means that there's going to be obviously some sort of repercussion for not. Otherwise, it's not mandatory. So is this repercussion a fine? Like what is the repercussion if you choose to abstain from voting, if you do not want to participate in the democratic process?
Yeah,
you don't have the right to exercise that choice anymore. So since you don't have the right to exercise that choice anymore, what's the repercussions?
Jammy's laid out his. I also would love to hear if Jammy would give an exception to like sovereign citizens, because we like to make fun of them. But
I heard a fine.
For me, I look to other models, and the fine model does seem to work. I don't know positively that would be at the end of the day. That the model Jammy just gave was the first one I had heard about, the repercussion being basically geared toward the population, more toward individuals. It's very interesting. But yeah, I'm fine with, and I've even said I would do a fine that only goes after your tax return. So it's not actually something you're going in to pay.
Well, why don't they vote while they do their taxes? Like, I mean, I do stuff on H&R Block, right? At the very end, then there's something you could do for voting. I mean, it doesn't have to be all at once. It can be incremental steps. That is one way to increase how to do it.
The only part I would make completely mandatory 100% across the board is registration for voting. And I think that
I'm on board with that
way easier. So as far as like when you pay your taxes should be a moment you can renew your registration or create your first one. Even if you're just going to the post office, which is where you register for selective service if you're a male in America and you turn 18. Maybe not anymore. You probably go online. But I went to the post office.
I joined. I didn't have to.
Yeah. Oh, well, there you go. I was rejected, but we'll talk about why my butthole the military doesn't like later. But what's that?
Did you tell?
They asked and I told.
No, wait, who asked you first?
No, it's a joke. But anyway, I would probably be in favor of a fine system. However, right now it's a looking at a problem of voter turnout is piss poor, voter engagement is piss poor. We have this problem with the Electoral College that we don't have a reasonable solution to, as voter turnout is as it is, and other problems is like how hard we hold to the two-party system. So I see starting with mandatory voting with a model similar to mine or close to mine as a good start. As far as the little detail of how we find and stuff, I would say that is, or the repercussions, totally open to debate on what we would use as a.
Okay.
I do not. Like I said, I don't want any type of repercussion on the act of not voting. My whole point was mandatory registration. And the same caveat as selective service, right? You choose not to do selective service, you might not get a job, you know, those kinds of things that come out as a result of it, where I guess it's set up in a way to kind of shun that citizen. How dare you not do your part? But the voting, like I said, the point here is to allow civil disobedience, which has been a mainstay for American history as far as making.
So your model isn't mandatory voting at all. It's mandatory registration. And then the election essentially is written off if the turnout's not high enough.
Right.
And you got to start from scratch.
And at the risk of sounding like Ron Paul, where I have an answer, but I can't tell you how to get there. It's a complicated, I admit, it's a very complicated solution, but sometimes desperate situations call for desperate measures. I mean, we might need this to get the country back where we're a leader in democratic fronts.
So how does increased voter turnout manifest in that? Like, what makes you so certain? Because right now there's apathetic people that aren't voting because they're having a difficult time getting to a poll. So I can understand making it easier to cast a vote. I'm all on board with that. They aren't registered or they're being stifled from registration. I'm 100% on board with that. The cutting off an election, where people took the time and managed to go out and vote because there wasn't a high enough turnout, or making it mandatory. I don't, just making sure that there's a higher turnout. What does that ensure for you? What's going to improve that's better now that you need to put all of this administrative and financial burden in place, and these people no longer have the right in your model to abstain from the system? Like, what improves? Apathetic people aren't necessarily
I still object to the administrative and financial burden. That burden already exists. It's to the extent that it is actually.
It would be like quadrupled, though. I mean,
it would. I mean, I work in.
I'm sorry. What you're talking about right now, I could use it. We could just remove this as the argument and go with, actually, you know what would be great? If we went to 20% of people voted, because that administrative and that financial burden would go so far down.
We don't have to rebuild that. No, Jimmy, I'm stopping you there. No, I'm stopping you because you have to change the entire model, because now you have to track people that aren't voting. 20%. This has nothing to do with the amount of turnout. This has to do with what happens before, during, and after the vote. In order, the entire system has to change if you're tracking who did and did not vote, and then going after that.
I agree with much of the second part of what you said, but the first part, as far as
in place and implemented for that to happen, and implementing things is not easy in a bureaucracy
or cheap. Do you think that would require the establishment of a completely new type of governmental agency to do something along those lines?
Or a different department within an existing one.
It's going to require a lot of manpower, a lot of funding. Logistically,
it'll create some jobs,
money,
as will mandatory registration by itself. But again, we're still talking about. I think we all agree, maybe we don't, that the ideal situation is extremely high voter turnout. So what we're talking about is why not to do.
I was going to address
Jammy. That's the answer that I want to hear about what Shannon has. But to kind of dovetail on that, just to see if you can answer these two questions at the same time, because they're kind of related.
Okay.
Isn't it better ultimately to have people who are informed about the issues that they're voting on vote, rather than put it in the hands of people who are just going to be guessing? I mean, the fact that the people go out to the polls to vote, they know what the issues are. They're actually taking the effort to go out and vote. Wouldn't it be kind of dangerous to be putting it in people's hands who are just scribbling something on there to get it in without, the repercussions of not doing it?
You're just making them go hand in an empty ballot. Why did they show up?
Okay, so the best example I can give you this is the last presidential election. I'm going to speculate a little bit here, but I'm going by studies that were done by other political scientists. I'm not a political scientist, but there was the idea that the reason why Hillary lost the election was because she got caught shafting Bernie Sanders, and those Bernie Sanders supporters in protest said, "Screw you, Hillary, I'm not voting for you." Otherwise, she would have had it in those key battleground states that was with our electoral college. So what I'm saying is you would need a major change. It's empowering these people. We have an issue in America with political efficacy where it's low. There's low faith in the voters that our government, their vote is being represented to the level that it should be. Now, obviously, when people say my vote doesn't count, that's a load of crap, because if everyone felt that way, there would be no voting, and then we wouldn't have a democratic process.
100% agree.
Okay, but
I wish everybody would vote.
right. And so the idea here is that the idea here is that
Jamie, I swear to God, I'll jump through this computer.
The idea here is that people don't vote. It's saying something. It's making the same message. There was a senator in my state. I worked with him for years. I mean, directly in his office, cell phone numbers, you know, calls, that kind of thing. A longtime career politician, really admired the guy. And then he got caught at a very major piece of legislation shafting his supporters. And I made an effort. I flipped and I said, now I'm going to get people educated on what you did. And he had nobody that upcoming election year to oppose him. He was an incumbent, no opponent. And I told people, don't vote for him on the ballot. Just because his name is there for the party that you happen to like doesn't mean you have to fill it in when there's no opponent. So leave it blank. He had an all-time low. Normally he gets about 10,000 votes each of his election years, and this time he got 120, somewhere right around there. Sounds weird that I was so specific, but then also vague. But anyways, he got a very, very significant low turnout, and his publicist put out a statement to the press basically saying, not sure why people are so dissatisfied with him. It's like, yeah, there you go. You got the point. People are dissatisfied. Just because they didn't have a choice doesn't mean that they're happy. And so that's the point, is leaving that civil disobedience as an option is what's most important to me, as well as getting the turnout high.
Yeah, I agree. You should be able to turn in a blank ballot, but I still didn't hear an answer for why increasing the turnout is what we're striving.
Why is that important?
Why forcing an increase in turnout is what we're striving?
Because 60% is pretty high to me. Why is not like somebody had pointed out, the God's Island pointed out, in a country of 600 million people, I would think 60% is a
300 million
high number.
Well, it's a lot higher than I thought it would.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised. I mean, I thought it'd be somewhere in the 40s or 50s.
Yeah. So Jammy, actually, I'll let you go first, and then I've got mine.
Well, personally, I think it's a sign of laziness.
People have the right to be lazy, though.
When you said liberty, when you said that that you're worried about people having access, I say that's not a credible thing, because
I like what you did
the
there.
Democrats, and I'm not picking on Democrats, I'm saying they are notorious in a good way for getting people to the booths. I mean, the busing, picking people up, even if they're on the side of the streets, hey, make it to the polls, get you there. We already are doing calls and reminders. I mean, these things are already existing to get people out there. There's access. How many times do you have to vote in a year between your school boards, local caucuses, primaries, and generals? You're talking, 3-4 times tops per year. I mean, whether it's a federal holiday or not, to Jimmy's model, it's accessible. It can be better. I mean, like I said, there's more people who vote on American Idol for who their favorite singer is than who turned out for the presidential election,
right?
In terms of percentages of fans. But
that's because it's got Ryan Seacrest on it.
Yeah. So yeah.
Calm down, Kyle.
Right. And as far as the having every ballot turning in empty ballots, it also takes care of, which Shannon, I don't know how much this happens in Canada, but we right now have study after study and ruling after ruling showing that in a lot of states, voter suppression is an issue. You eliminate voter suppression the moment one ballot per person is turned in. If everybody turns in a ballot, there is none. And once again, it also eliminates a lot of the justifications, though not all, for the Electoral College. So we can actually move toward a democratic system of a popular vote.
Yeah, see, we have members of parliament. I vote for a member of parliament. Essentially, the leader of the party that has the most member of parliaments becomes the prime minister. So we vote for individual representation.
So you vote for them, and they vote for you.
No,
so you have two elections of tremendous financial burden.
That's kind of how
I swear to God, say financial burden one more time.
But the
one more time, condescend me, Jimmy. I swear to God.
Financial burden. The Electoral College is set that way kind of right now. But you want to move from plurality to a majority system, a simple majority system, right? By doing so, there's a couple of reasons, like you said, why the Electoral College was set up. And from one of my civics classes year back, whenever, I thought the reason they had the Electoral College was to make sure that every state had some delegates that they could send to have some kind of representation for their constituents.
Do you believe that modernly has borne out, though?
No, I think we can eliminate the
right.
college.
No, I think there's a couple of things wrong with the Electoral College today that has ruined. So that's the cut and dry, simple explanation that gets taught all over public schools and in many colleges. This is why the Electoral College existed, was to get the awareness of the vote out to everyone and make sure there's fair representation. But it's no longer fair representation, because years later, after the Constitution was ratified, they started switching to winner take all positions with the states. And the idea here is, like I said, geographically represented demographics. How are the counties doing? Instead of saying, New York gets 36 and California gets 50 and 53, and just putting out that way, break it up by the electoral districts. This section of New York. That's why I said, whether you're for or against Trump, there's a great picture. If you just look at the national vote broken up by county, it's all red. Again, I'm not saying that's justification or not in the sense of, is he a good president or bad president, or did he win the popular vote or electoral vote? All I'm saying is the intention, the original intention of the electoral vote was to do two things: best represent the geographically based demographic, and also make sure that the people in the know could vote for the president and take it less out of the hands. Also, with 100 years after the Constitution was ratified, they connected a popular vote to the electors. It used to be the state national parties picked their electors, and that was it. You never heard about it. But then they started adding presidential spot onto the ballots, and then they connected the popular vote to those electors. And it's just, people don't realize, they go there and they say, I want Hillary or I want Trump, and they're actually picking the people, that's representing their state.
Right. And the fact that they're not aware of that kind of shows.
Not aware of it at
people
all.
Maybe shouldn't be voting, but it also they didn't want to elect a tyrant. I mean, obviously we came over from Britain, we have the monarchy. We understand how tyrants get elected in office. It can happen. And wasn't the Electoral College somehow, they wanted to have a separation or a buffer between the highest presidency in the land, the highest office in the land, and the people. So that would act
speaking of that,
against that.
Go ahead.
Those are the motivations. Yes, you're correct, Steve.
Speaking of that, couldn't we factor in term limits for senators as well? I think that would go along well with establishing trust again with the American people. The fact that you can have,
we could do that in Canada too, actually, or just get rid of the Senate.
I think that would go a long way to
Senate can just go by.
If you guys want to debate on should there be term limits, I'm all in. Hell's yes.
But by the way, if we now do that, we now have even more demand for an informed electorate and receiving a ballot. So let's just say that's the level of mandatory voting. Can we all agree that everyone in the country should receive a ballot, and that could be a level? I think you should have to turn it in, but you see it actually here in Colorado with our mail-in ballot. The number of registered to the number of people voting is actually pretty high for us, because when you receive, like we just did for our primaries, a lot of people who otherwise would have been like, I forgot about it, whatever day came along, get this ballot, and they go, okay, was I going to vote for we just had our primaries for governor, and now the Republicans all think they're gonna win because we had an unexpectedly high turnout for the gay Democrat to be running in the election for coming up. So you actually see that borne out. So it does increase engagement. I hope that means it increases information. Now, if that means that every single person is the day they're getting their ballot, just going and Googling and on surface level.
Some people do that now.
What's that?
Some people that vote do that now.
Right, that's true too. That's true too. There's also
would be good if it wasn't such a financial burden, though. I mean, getting everybody a ballot would be too much of a financial burden.
Kyle, I swear to God,
it really would be an enormous financial burden.
Don't get him started on financial.
So if we can agree to that point, then we're just on our end pushing the line a little further. Obviously, again, Jammy's got a different position on me on the level of enforcement. To tell you the truth, I'd be stoked if we were doing any of this. I'd be stoked if we were doing what we did identify at the beginning is a long list of problems we have, and keeping the system as is not going to fix that. So if you guys wanted to do a more fair representative electoral college because mandatory voting's too hard to jump to, I'd be down for that. Term limits on justices and senators, I'd be down for all of that. But all of these things are also things that will.
What about the Supreme Court?
More engaged.
It just trounces on your right to be able to say I don't want to vote. I think that's the hinging point with me, is that you should be able to say I don't want to vote.
You should be able to say
and
that.
Why aren't you?
How is that not done with a blank ballot?
Vote in federal elections when you're born. Like you get a social insurance number and that registers. Well, here you get a social insurance number. I don't know if you have the equivalent there, and that essentially registers you. Like that.
Yeah.
You need a photo ID after that, and you're set. As soon as you file your taxes,
Yeah, I
and
don't have a problem with that.
and get a job. You're registered to vote. You just walk in with a piece of mail that says, "I live here. Here's my social insurance number. Here's my photo ID," and they're like, "Here's the ballot."
The government going
Then you
here,
vote.
you have to take this paper and turn it in. I think is a.
You just need to prove you're a citizen. You have
Yeah,
a
we do
social
that all the
insurance number.
time.
You got a piece of mail with your
tells them,
address or photo ID with your address.
Look, everywhere you go, you prove your identity. I mean, let's be realistic. You do prove your identity for various things. And
Oh yeah, you need ID to vote. Do you not?
So, I mean, I don't think that proving your identity to vote is any big deal.
No. Prove your identity to register. I don't think you have to prove. I don't prove my identity with my mail-in ballot. Who's checking my ID at home?
You actually don't.
Oh, we have to prove our identity to vote here. You have to prove your identity to
we
vote.
have to prove our identity to register. In some states, they have what are called voter ID laws. Those voter ID laws, though, are used again in suppression methods to go because there are a large number of people who don't have.
But you could cast more than one ballot.
That's backwards.
No, you can't.
They do. Well, they can. Let's be realistic. They're having dead people that voted. Okay.
Right. You could go cast a ballot and then go to another polling station and cast somebody else's ballot.
You would when you register for a voting method and a voting station. So you couldn't.
Like, so you can only when you register,
I could
you have to vote at that one place.
They have
in Wyoming. The only place I could vote was the firehouse at the end of my street.
Interesting.
Yeah, they have a roster of where your voting district is, where your ballot is supposed to go, and then you show everything and they line you out.
By the way,
we get a polling station.
I'll send you the episode of John Oliver that says it much better than me. The dead people voting thing actually isn't an issue. They took this big number of people they said did. By the end, they got it down to 5 cases. I think the number was 5, where it was like, these ones we maybe don't know. We're not positive of. They didn't have a single instance.
Well, okay, let me phrase it. We have a lot of
brain person was voted for fraudulently.
We have a lot of brain dead people that do vote. That's a fact.
Yeah. Okay. So that's we're talking about democracy. I agree. There are lots of people who are too stupid to do most things for themselves.
9.
And yet we also, and I'm not saying that elderly people are too stupid to vote. However, it's funny how we'll have the argument about whether they're too stupid to drive, but they're also one of the highest represented voter turnout is highest amongst elderly people. So as far as like, if we're going to say intelligence and there should be an IQ test and all that, then you're getting into really not a freedom right.
That's so.
No, I didn't say that.
Engineering.
I wasn't actually representing.
I'm debating it,
Steve. It is.
Kyle's the one saying that.
That is brought up plenty.
Oh, sure it is.
Live chat here and there. People are too stupid. The IQ. There's not an IQ test to be a senator. So to vote for a senator,
there's not an IQ test. To be
that's right. You should have the same
I think it's an important. Thing to factor in, though. Jamie, you said that the uneducated were the least likely to go out and vote, correct?
Yeah, right. And I was going to touch on something else I brought here was the reasons why people vote. What is it? What are the 3 or how? Excuse me, not why they vote. What influences them when they vote? Because I think it speaks volumes to why people aren't voting. Yes, I'm doing a little bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? Jimmy, help me out here. Right? When you're trying to.
I started reading the live chat.
So the political scientists have identified 3 main reasons why how people are influenced when they vote. 1 is party loyalty, 2 is the issues involved in an election, and 3 is characteristics of the candidates running for office. So in summary here, party loyalty is self-explanatory, but there are a large portion of people who do not identify with a party. So, they're going, what's it matter? It's either a Republican or Democrat. And I don't like either one of them. I wanted this person. You have the issues involved in an election. There's a lot of single issue voters. They will turn up just because of abortion, or just because of gun control, or just because of, decriminalization of drugs. That's the only reason they're turning up. What about people who aren't either educated on the issues or just have numerous opinions equally across the board for all of them? And then characteristics of the candidates running for office. We get into this retrospective and prospective kind of approach to voting where I'm a retrospective person. I believe that you should look at the person's previous voting records, their experiences. But I'm going to be honest with you, it takes a crap load of research. It's a lot easier to be prospective where you just go, hey, let me watch the debates. And if I feel that person, if they resound with how I think about certain things, I'm going to vote for them. And look, Now, to be retrospective about that prospective definition, how many times has that worked out for us in the past where we go on these empty promises? They'll just tell you what you want to, what you want to be told. I remember Joe Biden actually did this, where he pretended he was a native to Delaware by mentioning this bridge that he traveled back and forth, all the time to resonate with the voters, just to get them to feel like he was a hometown Joe. So forcing the vote to happen, I'm saying we'll collect those people who are sitting at home going, I'm not affiliated with a party. I don't have a single issue to vote on. And neither one of these candidates are resonating with me from a feelings-based position.
Nothing's going to change in my life. Why do I care? Why waste my time?
Yeah. I mean, I personally think that the two-party system may be the most powerful system of voter suppression that exists.
No,
that may pave the way though for candidates like Jerry Johnson, who seems cool on the surface, but he's really batshit crazy. And Steve, if you have enough people who are voting in protest for the two main candidates, somebody like Gary Johnson could actively swoop in and win that election. That would just be horrible.
So while I don't like Gary Johnson either, I do think Gary Johnson should have the ability to, if elected by a majority, become president. Steve, you said no to my thing about what
it would be elected though out of protest for the other two though. I think that's for the wrong reason.
I'm for a two-party system for the most part. However, I mean, obviously you're going to still have other things like Greenpeace and independents, libertarian. But the reality is,
Klan for Shannon.
Yeah, I just
the reality is,
we were talking numbers earlier, 300 million people, and you think they're all good with two choices. I just don't.
Because the elections are huge, and there's a lot. I mean, we're talking financial, again, economic reasons, right? I mean, to have all these different groups, there's just not enough fundage for them to have the airtime, to have the advertising, to have the. I mean, how are you going to have the Greenpeace have anywhere near the amount of advertising that the Democratic Party?
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about a different problem that absolutely needs to be addressed, starting with the overturning.
Yeah, I mean,
I was just going to say, starting with the overturning of.
I think.
Can we just get a queen or a king, please, and make this shit easier?
You already have a queen. You already have a queen. You have two queens in the room. What are you talking
about? Yeah.
I'll whip this country into shape real quick.
I don't know if we should. It might be a huge financial burden.
You're so lucky I'm not in that room.
There definitely would be a financial burden on. I mean, ultimately, though, in all seriousness, that's probably the biggest reason why something like that wouldn't work, because of the financial burden on the country. I mean, we're already in debt up to our eyeballs. Tacking on making the people that you're going to have to pay.
Thank you for watching Fox News tonight. My God,
re-implement the entire
old
system.
It's true.
You have to re-implement the entire voting system. You need people to plan that to make sure that it goes off well.
What model?
Money is the bottom line.
What model solves all of those problems that we've agreed are problems that wouldn't be a tremendous financial burden?
I don't see it. That's the thing, though. I don't see a problem. I'm with Steve on this, where the 60% is a lot higher than I thought it was, and I don't think that you could come in and make people vote. I think it impedes on their right to. I mean,
and it sounds like the people that are educated on it, invested in it,
right,
not apathetic, and have a party affiliation,
they're making the choices,
participate in the process, are the ones that are doing it. The ones who are apathetic, who aren't invested, they're not.
The last one isn't the case. The want to do it. Not everybody who wants to does. Now, we are talking about.
Well, that's a different issue. That you say that there's voter suppression. That's a different issue. Mandatory voting might not necessarily
stop. And we agreed voter suppression was wrong. We agreed the Electoral College sucks. We agreed on a lot of things. And I specifically said the things we agreed on. What model do you have that doesn't have a tremendous financial burden? I will say there was an important part of my model that started.
Right.
Yeah, have Canada take us over.
The model we have now would be the one that I would put forth.
They've tried before, haven't they?
I don't see a broken system.
Then you aren't familiar with voter suppression, and I didn't.
Voter suppression's different.
I thought we've talked about the Electoral College, and you agreed it sucked.
I do agree that the Electoral College sucks, yes, but I would rather stick with that before I would overhaul it and make voting mandatory. I think.
By the way, there was a huge part of my model that was at the beginning that's been overlooked here too, which was the lower the voting age to 16 and make becoming a part of the voting process a part of high school. And that's also part of why I said cut it off at 35. You still have mandatory registration, but you don't have to turn in a ballot, because if by 35 you're still completely disengaged, fine, go fuck off. I don't care.
I'm willing to vote to raise it to 21, to be honest with you, rather than go the other way.
Well,
Okay.
somebody had a
I mean,
super
I'd
chat
still
earlier.
be-
That was a really good question, Jimmy, and I'd like to ask this question. I'm going to have to paraphrase it, but it was that they said, how are you going to prevent teachers from having influence, especially if they're teaching it in class? How are you going to prevent teachers from having influence over the way that these students are voting?
Yeah, that's definitely a very interesting question, and you're not going to be able to escape it everywhere, just like you can't even escape adults voting Democratic because they have union jobs more often. You can't.
Yeah, but these are children that are.
I know learning. You can't escape that in the adult world. I'm not saying do nothing. What the exact solution is, I'm not yet certain of, but it's another one of those. I'm not positive on what we do as the repercussions, and I'm not positive on what we do to prevent a teacher from just. I mean, my little sister, I remember coming home crying because my family's very Republican, and it was I think the McCain-Obama election, and she just felt terribly guilty because of what a monster racist she must be, because this extremely radical person was teaching her class about all the reasons why John McCain and George Bush are these evil monsters. So I agree that that's going to be a problem. We address it somehow. I, as one man, have not figured out what all of these political scientists and people who would actually be responsible, politicians and such, for setting up the process. I haven't figured out what.
Britton, just take us back. Just we're sorry. Just
please forgive us.
At least give us the metrics.
We fucked up.
Oh, God.
We love you.
Reverse Brexit.
Please,
renter.
take me back.
Can we have the American unrevolution?
I missed a word and was totally.
Hey, you know what?
I figured it out now. I was like, "What are they talking about?"
Kyle, it didn't work with my ex. It's not going to work with England. Okay.
Oh my God.
Oh, okay. Well,
it's funny. A bunch of people have tagged me so far. A bunch of people have tagged me so far and said illegals should not be allowed to vote. I don't know anyone who thinks they should.
Yeah,
they would be considered citizens if they're illegal.
I think in an ideal world, yes. Would you want everybody to exercise their right to vote? Absolutely. But I think it's just that. I think it's just that, though. It's a right, meaning that you can choose to exercise it or not. Yeah. And I don't think that you can force people to do that. And like Shannon pointed out, the system seems to be it's higher than we thought, and the right people are voting. So
yeah, no one has actually demonstrated that the right people are voting because everyone's agreed voter suppression.
Jamie just.
I'm with you on that.
But
the voter suppression and making
in a democracy,
how is that going to solve voter suppression?
Absolutely.
You're just punished. Maybe they'll still be suppressed, and now they're being punished for it.
In a democracy, the right people are the ones who choose to vote.
Yeah, it's two different issues, I think, and
yeah,
you know,
completely.
I'm against.
It is two different issues.
Well, I'm against enhancement of the government in most ways. I'm for smaller government, right? Anything that leads to a smaller government, I think has always been more effective. And so I want to minimize things. I want to be a reductionist when it comes to government. And that's not saying we don't need the government. Obviously, we do. I mean, we have socialized things now. There are some forms of socialized medicine. VA is socialized medicine. We have socialized roads. Obviously, the government is a very intrusive part of our lives. But anytime they say we are going to have, you have to do this, or there are consequences, 90% of the time, not just me, but I think vast amount of Americans are going to go, no, there's going to be pushback on that.
Right. But to put this in perspective, did you mention on the show or earlier that you disagree with mandatory jury duty?
I'm not a fan of mandatory jury duty. I mean, I've been inconvenienced by jury duty. Right. I know it, and I understand why they have it. Don't get me wrong. And I do believe it's a civic duty. I get that. Right. And so I'm not saying eliminate it. I'm just not a big fan of it. And so if it went away, I think it lends more to the democracy we have of a free state.
And you can get exemptions.
You just got to go in and say some racist.
So you pull some loophole stuff, basically saying, hey, whatever. I mean, yeah, there's always ways of getting out of stuff, but I think there's a better way to do it. I think the system is broken with the jury duty thing, but I will defer to Jammy on that if he has a better way to do it, because I know what his feelings are. I've got a couple questions here I do want to ask. Well, I've got Jammy eventually, but that's one of the questions I want to ask him though about jury duty. Does he feel like it should be changed in some way?
Well, I just think it's the part about it. I cracked a joke earlier, probably got missed, but it's the idea you can get out of jury duty by just pretending to be a racist. I mean, that'll get you off right away.
Hold up a 5, Jamie. Hold up a 5, Jamie.
Hold up a 5. Oh, okay.
Hold up a 5. That's not even a joke, because it's true though. It's true. I mean, you can go in and you can say some goddamn stupid shit, and they'll be like, "You're excused," right?
Yeah. By the way, I got out of jury duty for chronic diarrhea, so it's not that hard. You just have to swallow some pride.
Here's
the hell's wrong with you?
I got an idea. The best way to get out of jury duty is just go show them one of our videos.
Yeah,
tell them the Earth is flat.
Tell the Earth is flat.
Walk you right on out there.
I'll say this: no matter what we disagree on, there's something we all agree on, and that's that Shannon looks lovely tonight.
Oh. Why, thank you.
As she's trying to get the sweat off because she's all mad at the thing.
Yeah, because we all know that sweaty, gritty look.
What do you think, America?
Our
for you to decide. Earlier today, we put up a poll where 100% of you said that voting should not be mandatory. We're going to put that poll out again and see if you vote the same way after hearing this panel.
I'm glad you stuck with the 100%. Now I have such a lower number to beat.
This is only 80% of them better show up to vote. Otherwise, it doesn't count.
Was that a plurality or majority?
Real quick, though, is a sticky note really the most efficient way to cool yourself? Because with the number of sticky notes you use, won't that eventually be a financial burden?
It's not a sticky note.
By the way, you actually
it's a cell phone stand.
You actually spend more energy
financial burden
than actually it's worth. But
we all stop shaming the thought, please.
You guys want the thoughterry, don't eat it.
So can I ask Jammy some questions on all this stuff that I've taken some notes and I have some actual legit questions I would like him to try to get his opinion on, if that's okay.
Oh, and real
quick, my opinion, if I can answer them, and I'll be an expert
on these things.
First question is it the Bill of Rights or the Bill of Liberties?
It's liberties. It's also rights, but he is right. It is liberties.
Red Eye asked a really good question too that I want to throw into the mix, which is, was it 60%?
Screw him. He doesn't matter.
60% of the population.
Oh, get your emus.
Was it first a Canadian? He's further away. Who cares?
Was it 60% of the population or 60% of registered voters? Because that's a tremendously different number.
So yeah, so it was actually 60% of people who would have been eligible had they registered. Anyone 18 and over. Let me simplify that. And then actually, if you on that third slide, the gold dot represented how many people voted out of the total amount that were registered and active. I forgot to say that earlier. An active voter is somebody who filled out the registration card and the polling place mailed a postcard back and it wasn't rejected. So you don't even have to live there. As long as you're still receiving mail there, they'll count you as an active voter.
Interesting.
But anyways, so 86% of the people who were registered and active to vote showed up in 2016, which is, I was actually surprised by that. But again, we're still low on the list.
That's huge. Anyway, so this actually got mentioned. I wanted to ask about this. Jimmy had brought this up about term limits. One of the reasons we have term limits for Supreme Court is the fact that they don't want the high justices to have a bad decision, be worried about a bad decision. They want to be able to have they state their opinion, whatever on the case, right? Yep. So you believe that should be still that way, that Supreme Court justices should serve in perpetuity to the end of the life.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Yeah, that hasn't bothered me. Yeah.
Okay, I'm actually on board with that one.
Can we all pray that Ruth Bader Ginsburg lives to be
another 12 years?
I can answer this generally.
She's going to retire before she dies.
You can do term limits without the possibility to impeach, which would take care of you don't want to have to worry about a bad judgment, but then you
get voted out of office, though.
Then you eliminate the possibility of, like what we're seeing right now, one party potentially having the next 30 to 40 years of all Supreme Court decisions.
None of this would happen if we had a queen. I'm just saying.
Okay. And Jamie, what do you think about superdelegates? If we don't get rid of the Electoral College, what do you think about superdelegates that can actually swing their vote?
Yeah, I think that's just
ridiculous.
That's a good sign of, like I said, I'll be the first to admit that there's definitely corruption in American politics. Whether if it's malicious corruption or if it's just happenstance from being sloppy and just putting a system together with short-term goals, whatever the motivation is, there is definitely corruption in American politics. I don't think for a second it's at the state where we need to all start over and completely wipe out our government and become sovereign citizens and anarchists and all that stuff. I'm not anywhere near there.
Am I being detained?
I'm not driving, I'm traveling.
Yeah. So my general position, like I said, I'm not giving you an answer as far as necessarily how it should be. I'm just telling you my personal opinion. Yeah, life, I'm fine with a politician being in office for as long as they want, as long as they're an honest and ambitious and motivated politician.
People.
Where do you find those?
Yeah, where do you find those in
right?
politics?
And so
Because
that's the problem is we need a way. We need a way to get them out.
Yeah, for me, this is where I disagree, because like I could even do that with communism. I am totally cool with being a communist if whoever is in charge is just perfect, but that doesn't exist.
This coming from the guy who just said you'd be okay with impeachment as long as they were short term, or no, you said prevent impeachment.
No, I'm saying, yeah, I don't want to impeach justices.
Yeah. But all right, what I'm saying is look at Colorado. You can do recall elections. There has to be a form of direct democracy. There are states in this union that do not have a form of direct democracy in 2018, and it's ridiculous. No referendums, no ballot initiatives, no recalls. How do you hold these career politicians accountable? So I'm saying career politicians are fine, need accountability.
Thanks, Obama.
I am way on board with you on that one. Okay, one last question.
I'm still term limits.
I blame him. I'm just kidding. I had to throw that in.
And then we'll do the super chats maybe. How do you feel on open state election, like for the general elections? How do you feel on have both parties been able to vote for any candidate they want on open elections?
Say it one more time. I feel like I missed something there.
You're talking about primaries, not generals, right?
No, what's leading up to the primary election, voting for their delegates. Anybody? Oh no, I'm sorry. For the
delegates or electors.
Right, not for the general election. For the primary election, how do you feel about open elections? Yeah, not for the general, because
I
had that backwards. I'm sorry. Right.
Without anybody who's watching this right now taking the current actions by these political parties as representing my position, I'm neither a Democrat or Republican because of their stance on certain issues or how they've been behaving themselves. I'm a traditionalist in the sense of the true reason why those parties were incepted was to demonstrate concepts of government, how our democracy / republic should be conveyed to the people through process and policy. Today it's become, are you pro-life? Are you pro-choice? Are you pro-gay? Are you anti-gay? Are you this, are you that? It's just ridiculous, the polarization there. But from a true original intent definition of the parties, I'm all for supporting your party. So I would rather outlaw this ridiculous nonsense of the way that campaigning is allowed, these super delegate opportunities, the super PACs like you're talking about. Get rid of that crap. It shouldn't be dollars that buy elections.
You're right.
It needs to be true positions, true voter power. We need to be a leader in democracy, not 26 on the list. That's just sad.
Steve, before you read the super chats, I have one serious question. Oprah 2020?
No,
absolutely not.
Not a chance.
Now, you know who I think it's going to be. Honestly,
Justin Bieber.
If I had my way, it'd be Joe Biden.
Joe Biden's who I really wanted last time. Are we talking about? Were you asking if we would like Oprah or if she will be the person?
Well, there was those rumors that it was more of a joke, but she was rumored to going to be running. But I honestly think that Biden will, and he's probably the only one that can do it.
I think Gavin Newsom from California has a really good chance at getting.
The thing with Biden, though, is that he pulls people from both parties.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree.
That hate Trump would vote for Joe Biden in a heartbeat.
Right, and so the question right now is, which would be actually better? A true opposition, not a moderate trying to use identity politics to present themselves as opposition, or a person who can pull both? Because if you're just talking about Joe Biden,
could pull both.
Well, yeah, I know you think that. I'm saying it might not be the case. So, for example, you see a lot of.
I'm telling you, it is the case. Absolutely, because we need to calm down after. We need to calm down after the roller coaster that we've been on for the past. Okay, you know what? It's only been 2 fucking years, and it feels like it's been like 8 terms with this man.
Yeah, that's because I saw more news this week of Trump scandals than I saw in the entire Bush and Obama administration combined.
Crazy. Give me somebody boring, please.
Do you know who I'm going to vote for president?
Bore me, Daddy.
You know who I'm going to vote for? Mad Mike
Hughes.
Guess
yourself.
Mad Mike Hughes has my vote for president.
You know what I want to ask that guy is how he was able to register for governor if he's so anti-government. I mean, I just want to watch this guy fill out the form.
You deal with this,
Jammy.
You deal with
missed it last night.
You did miss it. Dude, you missed a really
live. I watched it. I did catch it.
But his argument is, believe it or not, his argument is the same as Ken Hoven's argument, and Hoven ended up in 9 years in prison. That tells you how good his argument is.
Okay, but here's how informed your electorate is. Your live chat's all getting behind Shannon Q for president. She's Canadian. She can't be.
She's a woman. She can't win.
Don't you worry, Shannon. We can ratify that constitution.
Okay, it's possible, but the first thing she's going to have to do is break the glass firmament.
You know, after
that's a 3. Get a 3. Come on.
It's a reference to last night's show.
After Trump got elected, you cannot say that Mad Mike doesn't have a shot. I mean,
I wouldn't put him out of the running. No,
Shannon. Last night,
I would vote for Mad Mike before I would Trump. Honestly.
What happened last night?
Last night, Mad Mike said that Hillary Clinton was referring to the firmament when talking about the glass ceiling.
Oh, right. He's one of those idiots. Oh, that's the guy that made the rocket. I watched the first part of that.
Yeah. By the way, I have to get this out before I bust. But I saw a video earlier today from a guy. I forget his name, but I'm sure you've seen this, Steve. But I was in literally, my brain was melting coming out of my ears, and I felt like I wanted to run and scream in the room. But there's a flat earther that posted a video where he said that the reason that we're not on a station or a earth that is spinning, because you could get in a helicopter and go off the ground a little bit and just wait there, hover there, and you could land in a different country. After a while, the Earth should spin.
Did he say relativity? Tell me he said relativity at some point.
Grasp this. Okay, so he said, if I want to go to the Caribbean, I should be able to pull up in my helicopter and wait just for the Caribbean to come on by.
Wait 24 hours.
I'm not. Hey, you know what? I'm not driving. I am actually traveling.
It was that
in time and space.
That is the ultimate sovereign citizen defense.
Go on TV.
My car is actually stationary. The Earth moved it.
So I can finish my point real quick, though, on the whole Kent Hovind thing. The reason he went to prison, one of the reasons, when you capitalize all your name, right? He was trying to say that was a separate legal entity. So all the things that were done wrong was not him, Kent Hovind, the person. It was Kent Hovind, the entity, that did things wrong.
Structuring.
Yeah, the structuring, the 58 counts of felony counts that he got convicted of. That's the sovereign citizen's approach. That was his approach last night. But as Jammy said, how did he register for any of this stuff? Did he register as an entity or as himself? Because it doesn't work that way anyways. But they think it does.
Right. Am I being detained?
We've got to get some more sovereign citizens on here. Dude, they're like my favorite people to mess with.
They're my favorite.
Those First Amendment auditors. I can't wait for.
Christina just suggested a Jimmy Jammy ticket, and besides being the greatest signs anywhere, I will say I would want Jammy on top because this is much more his wheelhouse than mine. Jammy.
Jimmy.
I'm happy to oblige.
The signs will say Jam Jimmy, Daddy, something like that.
No, it'll just say Bromance 2020.
Oh man, God.
We got Jimmy LLC. What about Jammy LLC? You know?
How about gay hair, supple lips? That represents our positions.
Oh my God, your hair on his face would be amazing. Somebody's got to do that.
Super chats.
You already have enemies against
Super chats.
Should we both look forward into the camera with no obstruction so Photoshop can have their day?
Front.
Good thing I'm secure with myself.
Go ahead, Steve.
All right, here's the super chat. Shannon already did the one that was for would lowering the voting age increase the likelihood of teacher bias. Should I ask that one? But the next one, I like this one. If the pre-show voting had been mandatory, maybe the result would have been different.
What I'm ching. Where's your sign, Jammy? Where's that get?
You win the night.
Oh, that gets a 3.
I'm so sorry. I prematurely grabbed it. Sorry.
I'm not sure what this.
I say that all the time.
I'll defer to you guys on this one. I don't know what this one means. Maybe you do. Can ranked choice voting be the most accurate for choosing the best candidate? I don't know what ranked choice voting
is. I think that's what Jammy was talking about, right? Ranked choice?
Is it?
Right.
I'm not familiar with it. So,
yeah, it's definitely a good model that exists out there. There's lots to consider. Like I said, there's people. The thing that I just wanted to get to was it needs to be attributed as a citizen's responsibility to live here. I mean, what I'm fearful of, and it's a healthy fear, I promise, Shannon, But anyways, it's my fear is that we're going to get more and more and more complacent, and the idea is going to be somebody else will take care of it. Somebody else will take care of it, and that 60% will go down. And that's all I would just want to make sure is that people, again, this 2016 had a decent turnout. Again, my personal preference it would be 80%, but it was 60%, and I think it's because it was such a heated thing. But what about the year when we have two candidates running that there's not a lot of heat? People won't be energized.
They're very single issue voters, though, are they not? I mean, most of the voters I talk to, it's all one issue. It's either about, I'm voting because of gun control, I'm voting because of abortion. It's litmus test.
Well, but even if that is the case, another problem we run into is people aren't voting for the people who actually legislate. The presidential election is so incidental compared to where most laws come from. Certainly more come from Senate and Congress, and even more than that come from local elections, councils, local senates, local houses. And so when we're talking about that the 2018 election was pretty good at 60%, we're talking about pretty good at almost the least important, not single individual, but least important vote, which is who that president is. And we're completely skipping out on midterms, and we're skipping out on locals.
Local elections especially. I mean, I'm at the state and even county level. Change has to start at the lower end by far. Yep. I agree with you. This is my favorite super chat. It was a couple bucks people gave to us to tell you, let's get Shannon some AC.
Yes, please.
You live in Canada. How fucking hot can it be? It's Canada.
Open a window.
Maple syrup, and you'll be okay.
Yeah. What do you think?
The windows are open.
Godless Iowan said it must be 15 degrees Celsius there. Like, you know what the fuck?
By the way, guys, on Twitter, you just for the next 5 hours, you will be able to vote for. Do you think voting should be mandatory? Yes. Jimmy's model. Yes. Jammy's model. No. Everyone else's model.
What is this, an argument with, what is this, an argument with Matt Slick? You're only given 3 options? Come on.
By the way, that's also that's also a really shitty way to poll, where on the yes side you allow for distinction between the nuance, but on the no side you don't.
Well, there's no other.
I know you don't have an alternative model.
Make your own poll. I'll retweet it.
Right. You make your argument from Shu is my response.
My poll's only.
I would make the poll.
Make your.
Don't even say poll.
I can't make my own poll. It would be too tremendous of a financial burden.
Jimmy, I swear. Oh my God, wait.
Shannon, I didn't think
wait till later.
Shannon, I didn't think you would watch that video because of the title.
What, the Matt Slick video?
The Matt Slick P or not P?
Jimmy, ready? America, make your own poll.
P or not P?
Yeah.
2020.
Yeah.
Gay hair and supple lips.
Everyone is now mandated to make their own poll. That is
all of Twitter has to vote.
Actually, if not, and it will cost us billions.
By the way, you're allowed to just do a blank tweet.
But also didn't make tweet polls.
Two more super chats to get through, people. Two more.
I just want to say that my sign for this poll says I'll service your polls. Okay, go ahead.
Two more super chats. By the way.
Damn it!
That's two.
Okay,
hold on.
Let's calm so Steve can get through these.
Financial burden.
About right.
I do want to thank the people in the live chat that are telling me they liked the video I put up with me having a discussion with Matt Slick.
That was funny.
That was several years ago. I don't even know when that was. It was a long time ago. I kind of wish I would have changed a few things, but it felt good. I
saw G-Cat today too.
I have to amend my sign because apparently Steve services his own poll.
If you haven't seen
can P or Q equal a super chat reading?
Oh yeah. Yes, Steve, you have one job, Steve.
If you want to watch the funniest hangout of all time,
maybe 11 p.m. before we get out of here.
And watch the video I just uploaded the other day. It's the funniest hangout you will ever see, bar none. Okay.
It was funny.
Next one. Does it make sense to make people attend a certain amount of political events to stay informed, i.e., a public watch of debate with sign-ins?
Oh, now we're mandating everything. See, this is the problem. This is the slippery slope with.
I'm against that. I like the idea. Yeah, I like the idea. And I used to go to, when I lived in India, I used to go and go to the local city councils, and I would sit in, and I'd be bored, but there were some topics that I really wanted to hear their opinions on. But to make people attend those things, that's not even feasible.
No, I don't think
so. Hell no, we won't go.
And they are televised.
Which is why those aren't as important to attend in person anyways, because a lot of times people don't understand that those are open to the public for accountability purposes. So a webcam would satisfy that just fine. But people go there expecting this is where I'm going to get my voice heard, and that's not true. They have no obligation to open for public comment to be placed on the record. They might do it because they're trying to be nice and appease the people there, but many times they can say, hey, this is a private session between the board. You just sit in and watch, and that's fine. That's how it's supposed to be. But a lot of people go there angry about some issue. You put a stop sign next to my driveway, or whatever, some kind of sign, road sign, I meant to say, next to my driveway, and I don't like it. And then they get there and they're disappointed because nobody's really listening to them.
Well, it does depend on the they have various meetings. I've been to both kinds.
I want to say
it's all about the agenda, right?
We're talking about how mundane and shitty they are, but actually that's why they're a lot of fun, because some of the people who go and speak up, I remember this lady who must have been over 100 years old, and I'm not saying that as a joke, wanted to, at this council meeting, wanted to reject like a King Soopers or something from getting a liquor license because she didn't, she was like, well, are the police going to sit out in the parking lot and make sure that the people didn't buy underage? And it was like, this is your argument? Like, for one liquor, I don't know. It was just
they do bitch about some small,
I know,
petty stuff. Okay, last one. Here we go.
Yeah.
It's instead of mandatory voting, make it mandatory to be more informed. Must sign in a set amount of times at a public debate, watch parties, rallies, etc. to vote. I say again, I'm against that too.
Tyranny.
I'm against that also.
No, I'm fine with them having to watch public debates like the Non-Sequitur show.
Fair enough. That should be mandatory. We can make that law.
You have to subscribe, like.
Now
I think the first part of my model.
Okay, they win the night.
You win. Jammy wins. Game over. Thank you very much.
Like you already had it. But the thing I said in addressing the actual super chat, the thing I talked about in the beginning with making this a part of the education system would, I think, dramatically improve how informed the electorate is.
Just guys, the best place for you to find information on what you should do in terms of voting and the candidates is on Facebook. Everyone knows this.
That's a true story. Yeah,
that is
the authority people turn to.
It worked well for us last time.
Oh God.
Don't you just wish though that the post had the Russian accents that they actually have, like you could hear it?
I learned everything.
I need better at discerning information. That's what I wish. I wish people were better at doing source methodology.
Right. So that's the skill that should be taught in school. Go ahead, Jammy.
Source.
No, I was going to say I learned everything I need to know about vaccines and contraceptives on Facebook.
Right.
And my Twitter account. Well, my Twitter account's good for.
I learned all about your fathering on your Twitter account.
If I have any point of disagreement, it's the contraceptives. I learned the most everything I needed to learn in sex ed in Florida.
Oh,
where they taught me that
Jammy,
you actually
do you have a zero?
What's that?
Coming. It's
zero, Jamie. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you've not done sex ed in Florida. We were taught that you actually make AIDS by doing anal sex.
Yeah, Jimmy, you told me that abstinence is not going without a condom.
Okay. I'm now debating whether or not I should. Well, of course we'll do it because it's the right thing to do. Ladies first, Shannon, if you will.
Bye or something.
You've been on this show plenty of times. You're all veterans on here. You know what time it is now.
Plug time.
It's plug time. Oh yeah. I'm just
before that,
plugging
now you sing your favorite song before we close out.
Oh, so. Drop it like it's thought.
No.
Is that my new favorite song?
Do that.
Is it really?
Shannon, plug away. Tell us all about all that is Shannon and where we can find more of you.
Okay.
I don't know why you would want to see more, but
you invited me here, bud. You did this to yourself. You get over it.
Technically, I invite.
You'll see her again tomorrow.
No pity for you.
You'll see her again tomorrow too.
Yeah, that's right. With more really nice, insightful comments that people leave for me because they think I'm great.
Mm-hmm. What's the topic tomorrow?
That's gonna be our party.
Jeopardy.
It's just a shooting the shit.
If you make one category financial burdens.
I swear to God.
It's our 10,000 sub, even though we're at 12,000 sub. 1 million subscribers, 1 million views, even though we're at 1.2 million, and Kyle's birthday. So we kind of wrapped them all together and put it for one big thing tomorrow.
Go.
I'm still working on the Jeopardy and some other little treats.
Okay, I think I'm ready now. All right.
Go
so I'm Shan with 2 N's _Q0 on Twitter, and I have a YouTube channel called Shannon Q where I do not talk about politics at all. I mostly talk about atheism, psychology, and a little bit of philosophy as of late. I do some produced videos and some live streams where we have complex conversations, and we try to model positive communication strategies. So, you know, don't judge me by this, because Jimmy breaks out the worst in me. You can also get me on Patreon. I have a Patreon now, which is cool. I guess maybe I can get a new computer so that it won't die before the whole stream starts and make it late. Sorry, guys. And that's me. So hi, and I'll see you tomorrow.
You want to see appeal to don't judge me by my appearance on Non-Sequitur show? Wait till you get to me.
All of them. He's also colloquially known as the idiot whisperer.
I still use that. Don't judge me, but I use that all the time.
Do they still call you that, Shannon? Is that still your unofficial title?
What? Oh, no, I never liked that title. You gave me that title. It made me feel bad for the people I was talking to.
You are the idiot whisperer.
You still haven't found somebody that'll yell at me yet.
Okay, you two get a room. You two get a room. Jamie?
Yeah, just wanted to tell people to hit me up on Facebook or Instagram at Jammy Sizlo, all one word on Instagram. I have a friend request too on Facebook. I don't do Twitter though, because I find that all that's on there is a bunch of thoughts who wear full dressed yoga outfits and sit on the back and take photos. Through that.
That's all it is.
Yeah. But yeah, Facebook and Instagram, and I'd be happy to make fans out there, or friends, more importantly.
I can't breathe.
Go. Tim, you're up.
Me? Sorry.
Yep.
I'm Mr. Atheist at Dear Mr. Atheist on Twitter, Mr. Atheist on YouTube, and believe it or not, myself, Steve, and Kyle usually agree on much more than we disagree on. However, I only seem to come on for the controversial side of topics, which is fine. I love that. But go check out my stuff. Watch my stuff on astrology, Mormonism. There'll be things that most of you agree on, except for, I'm not going to say the name, but that one clearly alt-right incel in the live chat. You can stop leaving comments on my shit. Nobody gives a fuck. Fuck you. Fuck you, like and subscribe.
So, everyone, join us tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern for Wolf Butlitzer, Anderson Pooper, Jake the Tapper, Poppy Thoughtlow. I'm Fucker Carlson. You've been watching the Dick News Network. Join us tomorrow, same dick time, same dick place.
This is DNN.
Oh my god. My heart.
I could say penis tomorrow and see how many eggs you have left, Shannon.
Are we still hot?
No Shannons were harmed.
Penis.
There go. Oh,
are we still hot mics? I want to ask.
My body.
Please cut them off, David.
Jimmy, so many times.
Send a fucking bazooka into this hangout.
Oh my god.
Jimmy, you said numerous times you're talking about Gary Johnson and Bush, and you just kept going Johnson and Bush and John.
I did that?
Yeah. A couple of times, not a lot, but I picked up on it right away.
Johnson, I didn't mean to.